Ladies, what a pleasure and a privilege to be with you on this electronic webinar conference for 3 days. I'm not sure, Kashni kind of alluded to it, but I've been a great supporter on the executive committee of CIPS for a couple of years and into the past. And I love the work that this organization does around professionalization and bringing the women's agenda even forward. Just really is exciting and moves me. So let's make sure that I've got my tech stuff going. One of my development areas is technology. So let's see how we can make this work. So I'm going to press the button and I think something happened. So probably about a year and a half ago, I was asked by corporate for their Women's Day to do a presentation, and this was sort of what we presented. And they kind of said, you need to use the theme Lean In, which is by the book from Sheryl Sandberg. And I read the book and I just saw this big disparity between men and women throughout the book. And I'm like, I know that it's there, but what do we do with it? And that kind of gave birth to this presentation. And something that kind of was very close to my heart was this quote I got: "Nothing splendid has ever been achieved, except for by those who dare to believe that something inside of them was superior to the circumstances." I think so many of us have been challenged in this last 6 months, and if we're honest, throughout our careers, but there are moments there are pivoting opportunities and moments, and able to embrace those when they come around and really tap into what's inside of you. Lean in and see what magic's inside of you. So it would be great to do just quick 3 stories. So about, I think it's about 3.5, almost 4 years ago, I went and I took my family, a large number of them, including my mom, who's 60, my brother, his wife, and pretty much my entire people shop team. We went to a transformational workshop where I knew we were going to have to do a 5 walk. But on the morning of the presentation, we buried my grandmother, and she was my person. And when I got to the presentation, late, because we had to fly in from Cape Town to Johannesburg, when I arrived there, we had to do a board break first. And the plank is no different to, if I grab one on my desk here, pretty much that. It's, I don't know, probably about 10, 12 centimeters thick. It is full on hard plank. And they said, break the plank. Right, your fear's on the one side, right, what you want on the other side. And I stepped back and pretty much have to push through to the other side. And I stood back, planted my feet, pushed through. I couldn't break the plank. And I tried again, and I stepped back and I tried to push through, and I couldn't break the plank. I had my team with me, and little pocket rockets were able to break the plank. My mom, who's 60 years old, was able to break the plank, and I couldn't. And I knew that after that evening is, as the leader of these 2 groups I brought with me, I need to step up, and can I walk on this fire, because I may be emotionally depleted. Second quick story is for the Amy Foundation, which I'm an ambassador for, I decided in a moment of craziness to do a 5-kilometer walk in the winter on the promenade, barefoot, and started walking and kind of felt a bit sensitive. And by the end of 5 Ks, I had blood blisters the size of a 5 Rand coin on my foot. But the story kind of goes, I had a very large family tragedy where we lost an entire family in a car accident. And it was a very, very tremendously traumatic time for us. And I was supposed to fly to India, leave my team and my family behind. And I was so torn between what I think I need to do for me and what I'm being told by the rest, or what people's expectations are of what I need to do. And when I got to India, after a lot of internal tug of war, they said to me is, Chantal, just FYI, we're doing a 5K walk, 40 degrees Celsius on a tar bitumen road in India. And I'm like, this is going to get scary. Final story. There's a parent sitting and reading newspaper, Facebook. Newspaper works better. A newspaper. And the child comes and says, Mommy, please would you play with me? And Mom says, I'm busy reading my newspaper. This is important. I've got to do this work quickly. Please, give Mom a moment. A child comes back and says, Mom, please, I want to play. And again, the mom says, I'm busy. And as the mom looks on the second page of the newspaper, there's a picture of the globe, of the world. And kind of a moment of brilliance says, takes the globe, tears it out and cuts it into small pieces. and says, I tell you what, you take this puzzle, and when you complete this puzzle, then we'll play. Thinking, oh, this is going to be a lot of mommy time, just complete the newspaper. To be continued. Let's talk about this thing about skills and talent and the skills gap we have. It is a truth that we are facing a skills dilemma. We have a shortened talent pool. I called it a couple of years ago, is we are in the perfect talent, we're in a talent perfect storm. And you can either see this as the worst thing could happen to us, or you can say as you are literally in the midst of a rising tide which can raise all boats. And the beautiful thing, I think, for a woman is that as I was growing up, everything was about IQ. It was about what you know, your skills and knowledge. Life right now is about who you know and who knows you. How are you promoting yourself? How are you positioning yourself? Life is about EQ. And if you get into the nuts and bolts about EQ, grace to God, because I'm telling you, it's the time of woman and we were created. This is 100% our time, because everything that EQ embodies is what we as women naturally are. So the shift from IQ to EQ is creating a platform for women. We speak so often in the work environment that we hire people for hard skills, you know, the skills, the knowledge, the technical skills. But we think about how we leave or we fire people, it's for the soft skills. And again, as we're moving in a time frame from a skills perspective, that it really is about the soft skills. It's about your competencies. And these are honed through depth and through practice. And again, as there are so many skills that are natural for women to be able to tap into. And again, that's an opportunity for us. I think many people saw this stats from the World Economic Forum around what the critical skill set would be. And 2015, it was hardcore complex problem solving and people management and critical thinking, negotiation and service orientation. But 5 years later, go back to 2020, literally for the first time, emotional intelligence came onto the top 10, literally up into number 5. And if you look at all these things in more detail, a number of these elements that are put down, creativity, everything is influenced by our state and by our emotional intelligence if you dig into it. And there's a beautiful stat by LinkedIn where they've actually said is how has the world transformed, and what these predictions actually came true is creativity is number 1 soft skill required. Persuasion is number 2 skill. Collaboration, adaptability, which is so beautiful that Nandi is speaking about that later, and emotional intelligence. No matter how disparate our male-woman leadership dynamic is at the moment, if we're able to tap into these competencies, there's an opportunity for us to do so. And many of these things, I believe, come naturally to women. Fast forward into this emergence of what we're seeing at the moment from a talent perspective. In days gone by, we saw everything was about this, and I'll come into this masculine, feminine kind of leadership style in a moment. But what we've been seeing is everything was about tactics and execution and cost and cost minimization. Where we're going into the future and where you will prepare yourself as a woman in leadership and a woman aspiring to women or to leadership is looking more at how do we maximize revenue. I mean, so many of us have got so many skills. Running your home, you know how to turn a penny. Bring those skills into the work environment. Be outcomes driven. You know, if you don't put food on the table, you've got to be creative as a mom to be able to deliver all the things we have to do. How do you kind of do work and kind of get the washing done at the same time? Complexity. I think as we are so, and I think even in this COVID period is we are making life so much more complex. And we're feeling all the load of more stuff and more responsibility. It's like saying is, how do we simplify this? Because complexity is the enemy of execution. If you want to get things done, if you want to raise the amount of women in leadership, what we need to do is simplify things, adapt and accept the uncertainty, and find simple solutions. The next thing is around decision making. I think sometimes, and I think as women, particularly, we are so. But there's this beautiful, it was actually a Dove advertisement. And what did they took women and they said as women, they had a sketch artist draw women. And by the end of it, when they showed the pictures of how women described themselves, the pictures that came out was a lot less flattering than these women really were. And what they were kind of showing is the way that we view ourselves is so self-critical. But if we're able to literally not procrastinate and not sit in what is wrong about the world, but one of the most beautiful things that I've incorporated in my life so many times is to think fast, but to learn fast, implement. Don't wait for perfection, because you're waiting for, I'll be honest, I was kind of expecting to start in another minute from now. I put in 5-minute makeup here. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about being able to implement, see what happens with it, and you want to learn from getting it wrong. But wait for perfection to happen before we actually implement anything. Implement, reiterate, change it up, and reskill, relearn, and implement again. We're living in this digital age where we don't have time for perfection. We have time for execution and adaptation. Dealing with the customers, again, is as women, I mean, I'm the first one to say, my husband can so complain about this, is that when I get talking, so you guys have to watch me for time, but again, as we're now effectively, we're only supposed to start now, so give me another 5 minutes, is I love to engage. As women, we are talkers. And I think that's the most things. We speak about collaboration being one of the key skills going into the future. Women, we can collaborate, we can communicate, we can customize, we are customer focused, we're natural mothers and nurturers. And the overall stance really is about integrating and crossing these boundaries. It's time for women to step up and to nurture across these different disciplines. I found in the business workplace, we are still working too much in this silo mentality. So a quick thing in terms of this plank. So as I literally showed you, is that evening, I couldn't break the plank and I just had to throw mine into the fire. It just burned. I couldn't break through it. And sometimes we have these limitations that hold us back from our true potential and our truest brilliance. But 2 hours later, when they put 600 to 700 degrees Celsius, burning hot fire, coals on that fire for us to walk up, and I had my team and my family behind me, and I had to step up as a woman leader, what did I do? I knew my why. I knew why I do what I do. I know that raising love in business, I am so inspired by your topic, bringing work-life balance, being able to find our balance, find our true north, and living our best lives in our personal lives and our careers, I believe is a predestined right of every person. Figure out your why. Look for the answers inside and then pursue it, no matter the degrees Celsius of fire you're working on. It's not an easy road of transforming. And I think our country has had a beautiful history in terms of being able to transform and empower different racial groups. We're now in the time where we need to now have the gender agenda be pushed forward and have more women be raised in leadership. I think Akash is going to ask me some stats now, but I want to, if you want to put in the comment box while we're thinking about this, is what do you believe is the number of female CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies at the moment? So poll question, but you can pretty much kind of put in comments, is how many women do you believe, and don't go research it, just if you know, don't say, but if you don't know, take a guess. How many women are running the Fortune 500 companies in the world at the moment? So know your why. It's really critical, because when you know that, no amount of deterrence, distraction is going to prevent you from reaching your goals. And the next quick one is around, I spoke about the Shakti leadership. There's a beautiful movement, and as I was doing this, I found this book called Shakti Leadership. And just completing the second story I mentioned is I was in India, again, in an emotionally stressed and strained kind of situation, and peer pressure, 108 women walking from one part in Puttaparthi to a temple. And I just started walking and kept walking, and my feet were burning, and I go from the tar road onto the sand and get stung by thorns, because sometimes you try to get out of the fire and you get out of the pot into the fire. And I just kept walking. And at one point in time, the young women that were walking with me, they encouraged me for a part of the way, but they fell off along the way. And it must have been about halfway through, there was this older grandmother, and she came to me and she said to me, "Gangama Swami," and I said, "Yes." And she took me and she literally stepped in and she held me shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, and she was walking with a water pot on her head. And for the next 2.5 kilometers, without being able to speak the same language, arm in arm, she held and she walked me all the way back to the temple. And when I got back to the temple, and there were some Westerners with us in this in the community, and they said to me, "How far did you guys get?" And I said, "I got back to the temple." And I'm the first person in 10 years to have completed this 5 kilometer, or first Westerner to complete this journey, this 5 kilometer journey. And the picture that you see in front of you is that I looked down at my feet, and this was about 6 months after I'd kind of had those blood blisters. Shakti, the feminine energy, would not let me burn. I did not have a blister. I had sensitivity, but I did not burn. Because when you tap into your female leadership, your Shakti leadership, that's when magic happens. The beauty about this masculine feminine energy, which we all, our souls is not masculine feminine, our bodies are masculine and feminine. But when you tap into your soul, which is both masculine and feminine, and you bring these two together, the beauty is masculine is word, feminine is meaning. Masculine is ability, feminine is inspiration. The beautiful the comparison is the difference between wire and electricity. If you're able to tap into your feminine leadership, I believe I believe that COVID has been the best gift we could have actually been given. I've seen so many men who I'm coaching and leaders I'm dealing with who said their perspective has been changed during COVID. They've realized truly what women are doing, and even they are having to be forced to tap into their feminine nurturing perspective, their traits. So this beautiful thing around Shakti leadership, which says is be present. And I encourage you, particularly in this time, even more so, when I know that we are pulling more hours. I think the boundaries on work life has been demolished. And it's important that we put those boundaries back. Because I've got people saying, Chantal, where I had an hour's meeting and it was face-to-face, I can now have someone in the UK call me up and demand, and just literally, not even demand, but literally book in a 2-hour meeting via Zoom into my diary. I've got people saying, if I'm working from home, to take a meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning is obvious. You're at home, why not? You don't have to travel. So this boundaries has been blown. And in order to pull them back, what you want to start with is presence. Be present. Take your moments. Take time to be able to center yourself and tap into your why. The second part is operate back from wholeness. What makes you whole? What matters to you? What is meaningful to you? Focus on your priorities, going in first, being flexible. There's a beautiful concept in NLP, the study of excellence, that says that the law of requisite variety, the person who's got the most behavioral flexibility will control the system. If we get hard and we tap into our masculine and we become rigid, we will not be able to drive the change that not just our country needs, but the world needs right now. Is be flexible, be moldable, find a way to get yourself back to your center and be congruent. I see this so often, I've seen this for 20 years of being in industry of talent and leaders predominantly, is we need to be women in a man's world. I see so often women get labeled as aggressive and forceful because we're trying to be men in a man's world. We need to be women. We need to operate from our feminine energy. And just a quick thing, bringing the work-life balance into this, about pretty much 2 years to date, is I realized one of my biggest dreams was to climb Kilimanjaro. And in terms of leaning in and in terms of leading, I think it's so important that we lean through. Find a way, under, over, sideways, find a way. Be persistent in your career, but once you know your why do you want to be in business? Why do you want to be a leader? What do you want to show your kids? What do you want to show yourself? I said to God about 10 years ago, I said, God, show me what this baby can do. Show me every talent you've got inside of this body. Show me what I can do. And on this mountain, on my mountain, Kilimanjaro is pretty much about, if you know Cape Town, it's about 5 tall mountains stacked on top of each other. It is 100 kilometers this way. And on this journey, there's a point in time where they can no longer airlift you off if you're not able to continue. And what there is a thing called a Kili taxi. And it's a 7-day journey, but after about 3 or 4 days, you start seeing these Kili taxis on the sidewalk as you continue walking. And the work-life balance, being a coach, was not lost on me. Because in life, we have a wheel of life. And it's comprised of 4 elements: your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, and your physical. The wheel of life. And you've got to bring your wheel of life in balance. And if you look at the stretcher, it really is a stretcher on one wheel. And that's the 4 pillars that you need, is emotionally. If you are not tapping into looking after yourself emotionally, and I know so many people who are depleted, their warriors are exhausted through this COVID period, is unless you heal and nurture your emotional side and only keep pushing this work thing, you'll fall backwards. If you're spending all your time in your not rejuvenating your mental side, your physical body will ail and you'll not be able to see this thing through to summit. And the beautiful thing about this Kili taxi is you need 4 different elements to balance this wheel. And the other part, if you look at this picture, is there are shock absorbers. And for me, the symbolism of the shock absorbers is as you're going, literally, and a friend of mine was Kili taxied back down the mountain, is you need the shock absorbers. And the shock absorbers are your values. When you're talking about your why is what do you stand for? What do you value? What has got meaning for you? When you tap into who you are, what you want in life, why it's important to you, and go from your values, that's when you can be able to summit any mountain. And a quick one I just want to show you, sort of maybe in closing, is in order to summit, for me, the big realization from Kilimanjaro was that I got to sell a point. And oftentimes in life is we go to these peaks and valleys. And I got to sell a point, and this was about 9 hours of walking throughout the night. There's no air. At the top of Kilimanjaro, you're only allowed to be there for 15 minutes or your organs will actually start shutting down. And we got to sell a point and we ugly cried, right? That's my brother, my Rafiki, my best friend with me on this journey. And when we got there, we had this realization that if you were able to see and you kind of follow this landscape line, as it kind of goes to the top point there, in the furthest kind of blue corner, we had not summited yet. We had another 1 kilometer and about 50 meters in altitude to complete to get to the ultimate summit. Because sometimes in life, you're going to think that I'm on the journey. My career is on track. I'm navigating no longer a career ladder, but a career jungle gym. And you've got to be agile during this process. But when you think you've reached one summit, there's always another. And we kind of hit a valley. And there's this beautiful thing called the second mountain. And for me, that's been one of the most beautiful ahas in this hell, which was the last mile to get to. I think so many of us are professionals right now. We've reached the first peak of getting through graduation, getting through getting into the work and the corporate environment, and probably navigated a role or 2. But that next summit for us is that leadership role. And in order to get there, for me to be able to navigate the peaks and the valleys I have, there was 2 really fundamental things that has been really powerful. And what it really was is, in that last mile, I'm going to be honest, I walked a beautiful journey for 6 days. And in this last mile, I cursed, I wanted to walk back. I didn't want to reach that last summit. It was 2 steps back and it was 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And at one point in time, our servant, the gentleman who carried part of our luggage and who was literally brought us our food every evening, his name was Gilbert. And Gilbert came back and said, "Es pole pole, Miss Chantal," which means slowly, slowly. And I said to him, "Gilbert, I can no longer go." And he said, "It's okay, Miss Chantal, pole pole." And he kept walking past me and he walked forward. And within a couple, I said to him, I said, "Gilbert, you got to come back." And I called him back. And I, at that point in time, went with him shoulder to shoulder. I said, "Gilbert, you have to take me this last while." And for me, the realization of being a servant and being able to accept help and support from someone else was my one major breakthrough. In life, it's so important if you want to kind of have uhuru, which means uhuru umoja means freedom and unity. If you want to have freedom from what's holding you back right now, it's so important that you operate first from self-love, operate from gratitude, and be a servant to yourself Serve yourself first in love and gratitude, and then serve others. The second part is service. So one is nurture yourself first, was my big lesson in order to summit your biggest mountains. The second part is when we're able to, I have this belief, and I find so oftentimes we're having this argument saying is, are there men, and you know, what is the difference between, whether that be race, class, or gender, whatever it is kind of saying is not to focus on the problem, saying is how am I part of the solution? How am I able to be a leader, to be a woman leader and to raise others? I have for most of my career been involved as even before I was actively professionally coaching, I was coaching others. I talked my best friend out of suicide 3 times when I was 13, 14 years old. It's when we start spreading a net of love around this world, that's when we can have incredible impact. So my encouragement to you is, woman, is to lean in, be a leader and raise another. Be a woman and be an example and a role model for others, that we're able to raise this tide together. Because a raising tide, when you raise up, you raise others as well. My personal mission statement is to lead the world through unconditional love, to accept what is good, but to also accept and embrace what is not good. My journey is one to raise the grandchildren of Africa. I really believe that COVID has been our most beautiful and precious gift for us to realign our priorities, for us to get connected with our families, our priorities, and our true why. Why are you in business? What do you want to achieve for yourself? How far could yourself go? I have seen what potential I can push myself to. And if you told me 5, 10, 15 years ago what I would do, I would not have believed you. Because the woman of 5 years ago, there was no way she couldn't do an August cycle to it. I gave that idea up after 5 years. I was not able to do my master's in industrial or in psychology 20 years ago, and now I've got a master's in NLP. I thought I would have a small business, and now I have a team around me. I've been able to raise so many people up in my journey. Be the example, live your truest self, and by default, you will raise others. And closing with a quote, I choose. I choose to live by choice, not by chance. To make changes, not excuses. To be motivated, not manipulated. I choose to be useful, not used. I choose self-esteem and not self-pity. I choose to listen to my inner voice, not the random opinions of others. Trust yourself, trust your own inner voice, and lean in. There's freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky, and you ask, but what if I fall? Oh, my darling woman, what if you fly?